Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Guest Emerges. What's up, fam? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Hercule Poirot and the footprints at Mulberry Gate, hit me up. What made you smile today, and where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready. Because nothing in whispers in the fog is ever what it seems. The night was thick with tension, a fog, creeping through the trees like a serpent drawn by some malevolent force. The wind howled mournfully around the old manor, its discontent seeping through the wooden beams as if sounding an omen. Inside, beneath the flickering glow of candlelight, a group of esteemed guests assembled in the grand parlor. Their laughter tinged with an undercurrent of nervousness, born of the tempest raging outside. But as the clock struck 9, the mirthful atmosphere shattered like glass. For at that moment, the doors swung open and an unnerving figure emerged from the shadows. With a breathless gasp, Clara Forrester, the host of the evening, recoiled at the sight of the tall, cloaked man who stood before them. His face was obscured by a dark hood, and as he stepped forward, he lowered it, revealing sharp features. A mask of stoic serenity framed by raven black hair. "Gentlemen and ladies, forgive my abrupt intrusion," he spoke smoothly, yet his voice carried an unsettling foreign lilt. The stillness in the room thickened, a palpable tension enveloping them all. It was not merely the mystery of this enigmatic guest that chilled their bones, but also the unspeakable sentiment that whispered secrets of danger lurking just beyond their vision. Hercule Poirot, acutely aware of the anxiety stirring within the confines of the manor, remained composed as he observed the reactions of the guests. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he mused inwardly. The oddity of the stranger's appearance was of little consequence to him compared to the nuances etched upon the faces around him. There stood Clara, her elegant features now drawn tight, betraying an internal fray, while her husband, Edward Forrester, shifted nervously, casting furtive glances toward the doorway as if expecting some worse calamity. And then there was the mysterious heiress, Lucille Hartman, her icy demeanor reflecting the storm beyond, and eyes that seemed to flirt with a darker truth. As the enigmatic guest introduced himself as Anton Sokolov. Intrigue took a turn toward the sinister. It was clear to Poirot that he commanded the room's attention not in camaraderie, but through an unsettling aura that made frightful silhouettes dance along the walls. The air turned stale as conversations faded, leaving only the sound of a clock's ominous tick echoing, a heartbeat for whatever was about to unfold. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the looming silence, emphasizing the urgency of the chaos. Clara, having ventured towards the library to fetch a drink, stumbled back into the parlor, her pallor akin to that of a ghost. In her trembling hands lay a crimson-stained note that read, "Every secret has its price." The room erupted into a flurry of panicked voices, questions mingling with accusations that only heightened the atmosphere of dread. It was clear that someone amongst them had wrought this terror, although their identities were cleverly masked beneath hushed whispers and feigned innocence. Poirot's sharp mind took hold of the situation, sifting through the chaos with a steady hand. He did not rush into the fray but observed, standing back like a master puppeteer watching strings pulled. Clara, with her agitated demeanor, had been overly eager to distance herself from the note's implications. Edward's eyes darted towards Lucille, who exuded cold confidence, her lips curling into a smirk that hinted at secrets buried deep. Each one of them wore a veil of suspicion that shrouded their true motivations, but it was in the minutiae. An anxious twitch of Clara's fingers, a hasty response from Edward, the way Lucille's gaze lingered on Anton, that Poirot discerned the latent tension. As a tempest raged outside, brining a tumult of rain and wind, Poirot decided to plunge into the heart of the enigma. He gathered the guests into the parlor once more, the crackling fire casting flickering lights on their anxious faces. With a calm authority, he began his inquiry. "Mon Amiss, you are frightened, and rightly so. But it is through conversation that we shall unearth the truth. What of this letter? Does it belong to any amongst you?" Each guest reacted differently. Clara's voice trembled as she insisted it was but a prank. Edward fumbled over his words, attempting to deflect the conversation back to Anton's mysterious entrance. Lucille, however, crossed her arms, her burning gaze showcasing an unnerving calmness that belied her own secrets. "Murder thrives in chaos, Monsieur Poirot," she said coolly, "and I advise caution amongst friends who harbor secrets." As the evening wore on, Poirot's mind became mercilessly sharp, slicing through layers of deception. Clue after clue, he observed the guests' interactions, the slight quivers in their voices revealing underlying truths. Anton, he surmised, was the embodiment of each one's innermost fears. To Clara, the specter of betrayal. To Edward, the unmasking of his ambitions. And to Lucille, an exercise in controlling a narrative that began to spiral dangerously close to exposure. Days turned to nights, and the storm persisted, matching the turmoil of emotions enshrined within the manor's walls. Yet amongst the veil of murky intent and revelations that seemed to grow with every passing hour, Poirot began to connect strands that led him further into an intricate web of lies. Each detail bowled over another, leading him to suspect that falsehoods shielded a more profound tragedy than mere rivalry or jealousy could yield. Finally, it was time for the reveal, and Poirot stood resolutely amidst his captive audience in the dark parlor. "The truth, mes amis, is like a coiled serpent hiding beneath tranquil waters. It strikes when least expected." With deliberate precision, he recounted the events, weaving together the threads of emotions and hidden motives, as each revelation struck like forked lightning, illuminating the abyss. It was Clara's turbulent past she had masked with smiles and elegance, for her family had fallen victim to a similar letter, one that cost them dear. But the greater twist lay within Anton himself, a man who came not as a mere guest, but as the harbinger of long-buried secrets. Poirot's voice lowered, resonating with a chilling finality. "In truth, you see, it was you, Lucille, who orchestrated this evening. A distraction to mask your betrayal of Edward, yet in seeking to protect yourself, you ensnared Clara in your web of lies." The air grew taut as Lucille's mask slipped, revealing a tremor of uncertainty. And betraying the storm brewing within her, the final act only intensified the grotesque ballet of their lies, a dance of tragic commonalities binding them all. In the aftermath, as the storm dissipated and the sky lightened, Poirot stood quiet by the window, reflecting upon the fragile heart of humanity. "Mon ami, we are left to ponder the depths to which love and betrayal may lead us. It is never merely the act of murder that steals peace, but the motives that dare to bind us to shadowy truths." As the first rays of dawn broke, illuminating the somber reality of their shattered relationships, Poirot sensed the bittersweet nature of justice. With dreams of solace haunting the remaining corners of those once unified, he left the manor knowing that some mysteries would find no solace, merely layered truths buried in the exile of night. Chapter 2. Footprints in the Fog. The night was heavy with unease, a silence that hung ominously in the mist as if the very air held its breath, waiting for the horror that would soon unfurl. In the distance, the melancholy howling of the wind wrapped around the manor like a shroud, amplifying the darkness that enveloped its inhabitants. Henry Aldridge, a loyal friend to the Forrester family, stood rigid at the grand window, peering into the inky void outside, his mind racing with terrible thoughts. Just beyond the threshold of safety lay the unknown, and it seemed as if that unknown had come calling, already claiming its first victim. Then, like jagged glass splitting the night, a crash of thunder erupted and illuminated the scene. A figure crumpled on the cold, damp ground outside. Without a second thought, Henry dashed to the door, flinging it open against the unyielding wind that howled as if in protest. The air was saturated with the scent of rain and something far more sinister. It was the metallic tang of blood, a rich aroma that sent a shiver down his spine. The fog swirled around him like ghosts writhing in anguish. And as he approached the still form lying in the mud, his heart pounded in his chest. For it wasn't merely a stranger upon the ground, but Anton Sokolov, the enigmatic guest of the previous night's turmoil, his lifeless eyes staring into oblivion. The chaos that rippled through the manor in the waking hours was palpable, as the remaining guests huddled together, their whispered conversations laden with dread. Clara Forrester stood, teetering on the edge of hysteria, while her husband Edward wrestled to maintain a facade of calm. Lucille Hartman, though pale, wore a veil of cold composure, observing the rising tensions with a keen, calculating gaze. Out of the corner of his eye, Poirot watched closely, his mind already piecing together fragments of the scene, discerning each drop of human emotion that colored this murky tableau. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he murmured under his breath, reading. The myriad emotions, from fear to guilt, etched across their faces. The arrival of the authorities could not dampen the gnawing sense of danger that seemed to consume the room. Instead, it amplified it, binding them all under an unspoken bond of suspicion. The constable, a stout man with a grim demeanor, scrutinized each individual, but Poirot knew the true weight of guilt had not yet been unveiled. "Monsieur Poirot," the constable finally relented, "what can you tell us regarding this tragic affair?" With a gracious nod, Poirot addressed him. "Let us not act impulsively, mon ami. There are nuances in every shadow that merit observation." He turned toward the guests, keenly aware of their reactions amid the escalating tension. "I must inquire first of you all, where were you when the storm raged and Anton fell victim to a fate most dire?" Clara clasped her hands tightly, terror evident in her trembling fingers. I was at the library searching for a book, something to distract me from the evening's dread," she stammered, but Poirot noted the hitch in her voice, the slight tremor of her lips as she avoided his gaze. Edward, in stark contrast, took to pacing, his footsteps echoing against the cold floorboards. "It must have been mere misfortune, a tragic accident. Surely we shouldn't accuse one another in these trying times," he insisted almost too earnestly, the caught glimmer in his eye betraying his agitation. Poirot turned to Lucille, who maintained an air of serene confidence as if she was above the treachery unfolding. "And what of you, Lucille? What was your involvement during this tumultuous hour?" he inquired, his tone refined yet firm. With a dismissive wave of her hand, Lucille's cool facade broke momentarily as she whispered, "I was here, in this very room, away from that ruckus." Poirot perceived beneath her words an underlying current of tension, a carefully constructed armor against the storm of their predicament. As the investigation wove deeper into the web of deceit, Poirot's brilliance illuminated hidden clues. Footprints imprinted clearly upon the damp earth leading away from Anton's body, and a thin red thread clinging to the inside of Clara's collar, both weaving a narrative that began to contradict their alibis. Clara's fingers would twitch nervously, a tell that betrayed her otherwise composed appearance. As night descended once more, the clock chimed ominously, heralding the arrival of deeper secrets yet to be uncovered. Each guest's story began to unravel during Poirot's meticulous questioning. Henry, too, had cast anxious glances and short, apprehensive replies, standing too close to Clara, as if attempting to shield her fragile spirit. Yet Poirot's piercing gaze caught the minute flicker of guilt lurking in Henry's eyes when he recounted the man's final moments over the library's chandelier, suggesting he might indeed have been privy to secrets of his own. The web tightened, drawing Poirot closer to the heart of deception. A flurry of perspectives lashed at him like the storm outside, the unending rain a mere reflectance of the tempest brewing within the manor. It was not merely a question of who had the strength to kill, but who had the motive, the subtle reason to erase Anton's intimidating presence from their lives. Yet just as Poirot appeared to grasp the emerging pattern, the winds shifted once more, revealing a jewel-like glimmer in a nearby shadow, a pendant half buried beneath a fern. It bore the emblem of an ancient family crest known to belong to the Hartmans, Lucille's family. "Mon cher, what tale do you tell us?" Poirot challenged, now a maestro conducting the unfolding symphony of suspicion. The final act revealed itself in a scene of heightened emotion, a cruel exposure of betrayals layered beneath lies. Poirot orchestrated the gathering once more in the parlor, each guest now a pawn awaiting his revelation. "The truth is a mask, cher ami. It bears the weight of unconfessed secrets," he intoned, his accent sharpening the tension. With a deft evaluation of each suspect's motives and a mastery of the emotional dances plaguing their hearts, Poirot began his summation. Henry's infatuation with Clara birthed a jealousy towards Anton. Edward's ambition had turned to fear of exposure, and Lucille, feeling threatened, cleverly concealed herself behind fabrications. Yet the dramatic twist came when Lucille turned from the shadows, unable to bear the weight of suspicion any longer. "I loved him," she screeched, eyes wild with despair. "I loved Anton, but he was a threat to everything I held." The revelation struck like a dagger, painting a tragic portrait of unrequited love turned bitter betrayal, emotions coiling tightly around the truth that Anton's presence was a mere harbinger of secrets long buried. In silence, Poirot watched as despair flooded the room, shadows creeping closer to engulf each soul within. "How the heart weaves a tapestry of truth upon a fabric of lies," he murmured, the finality of justice lingering bitterly in the air. As dawn broke, illuminating the remnants of their heartache, Poirot looked out upon the horizon, contemplating the tempest of human emotions that twisted in darkness. "How tragic it is, mon ami, when love drives us to our very undoing." And with those words, the truth rested heavy upon the hearts of those who remained, a dark reminder of the consequences lurking beneath the fog. Chapter 3. A Stolen Letter. The storm rumbled ominously overhead, its growls echoing through the shadowy mansion like the whispers of restless spirits. In the dim candlelight, shadows danced along the walls, twisting and contorting, a macabre ballet reflecting the turmoil within. It was on this bleak night that Clara Forrester stumbled upon a letter hidden in the cold recesses of the library, its crinkled edges promising secrets long buried. She felt an electric jolt run through her as she recognized the handwriting. Anton Sokolov's elegant script. It had been mere hours since their last encounter, yet here she stood, trembling as she pried the faded piece of paper from its hideaway. The words, now barely legible, spoke of desperate desires and inequalities that modeled the thin veneer of their relationships. The ink bore witness to a love she thought was mere intrigue, but was steeped in darker motivations. Unbeknownst to Clara, that stolen letter was but a catalyst, igniting a tempestuous firestorm of deceit among those still sheltering within the manor's walls. The pall of silence hung thick as she slowly unfolded the letter, her heart racing, a clock counting down towards some inevitable revelation. Just as she deciphered the damning words, a sudden crash echoed through the corridor, shattering her momentary focus and sending shivers racing down her spine. In an instant, Poirot appeared, his presence cutting through the tumult like a lighthouse guiding wayward souls. "Mon ami," he remarked, his voice a steady stream of elegance amidst the chaos. "Might I inquire what confronts you so?" The shadows danced not only to scare, but to reveal. Clara gasped, quickly stuffing the letter back into her dress pocket, her mind in turmoil. Before she could gather her thoughts, Henry Aldridge entered, eyes darting, a sense of urgency coloring his features. His loyalty to the Forrester family had been unwavering, but recent events had unraveled threads of his steadfastness. "What have you found?" He demanded, his tone laced with concern, but Poirot noticed the flicker of greed seeping behind his anxious facade. "Nothing of consequence," Clara's voice quivered, anxiety bubbling beneath the surface as she stepped back, shielding her newfound discovery. Poirot, ever the composed observer, regarded them with an eagle's keen perception, sensing the unspoken tension coiling between the pair. "And yet," he intoned, his accent sharp yet melodic, "there is an undercurrent of profound emotion coursing through this gathering, a tempest waiting to break. Tell me, what weight does this letter carry in the maze of your lives?" Their hesitance, punctuated by the chiming clock that marked the late hour, suggested a conspiracy hidden beneath layers of strained loyalty and desire. Henry's brow furrowed as he evaded Poirot's piercing gaze. "It is merely a correspondence of trivial matters," he insisted, but the audience's silence spoke volumes. As the night wore on, the flickering candles cast an ephemeral glow, illuminating fleeting glimpses of truth. The conversation morphed into a battleground, words sharpened into weapons as Clara's guarded demeanor became increasingly defensive amidst Poirot's austere questioning. In her eyes he glimpsed deep-seated trepidation, the echoes of a past that mixed inextricably with her present. The next morning, in the harsh light of dawn, the discovery made the air within the manor grow thick with tension. Clara, anxiety woven into her fabric, sought Poirot's counsel, imploring him to decipher the meaning behind Anton's words. Poirot nodded gravely, aware that every clue unraveled was reason for deeper suspicion. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, he mused softly, knowing the deeper secrets a letter could unearth. As the investigation unfolded, suspicions swung like pendulums. Edward faced reproach, his ambition causing him to conceal jealousy directed toward Anton's influence. "There's no reason to question my loyalty," he retorted sharply, pacing the marble floors. Poirot noted the tremor in his voice, which reverberated like a warning amongst their discourse. Lucille Hartman, ever composed, spoke with a measured demeanor, her words a cloak veiling the hidden anxieties of a woman scorned. "Why focus on Anton's letter when there are more pressing matters at hand?" she contested, her confidence faltering only when Poirot turned his discerning gaze upon her. Yet as Poirot tirelessly linked fragments of conversation, he unearthed the subtle discrepancies in their alibis. Several times he felt the darting eyes, an echo of treachery awaiting its revelation like an unsheathed blade. Clara's fingers harbored a tell of their own, clenching and unclenching as she concealed her thoughts behind a mask of calm. One particularly heavy afternoon, as rain drummed steadily against window panes, Poirot guided the gathering to the library once more. He stood before them, imbued with a sense of gravity that pulled them closer together, his presence demanding their undivided attention. "My friends, allow me to elucidate," Poirot began, "for a truth long buried emerges from the ashes of deceit." He laid the stolen letter upon the table, unfolding it before the guests. "These words, drenched in passion, speak furthermore of a love denied," he revealed, eyes sweeping the room. "Yet the deception runs deeper than mere unrequited feelings." Poirot leaned in, his tone dropping with a blend of authority and compassion. "Lucille, the heart aches for every emotion denied and masked in secrecy," he pronounced, locking eyes with the woman. "You yearned, perhaps, to keep Anton the pawn in your grand chess game with Edward." At that revelation, gasps ricocheted silently off the wood-paneled walls. Clara's face, pale as shock, radiated from her features. Lucille faltered. "You're mistaken," she cried, but doubt lingered in her voice, betraying the tempest within. Yet Poirot's scrutiny sharpened, his words unfurling like a grand tapestry. "Not merely a thief of letters, but a thief of love itself. You conspired against him, but my keen observations unveiled two truths. You loved him, and in love, instinct often births envy." The gasps grew louder, the weight of reality crashing against them like waves. But as the emotional current swept through the room, Poirot revealed the twist of betrayal that hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "Edward," he enunciated, "you loom large in Anton's shadow, and his affair with Lucille became a dagger not only in your heart, but also one that sealed his fate at your hands." As Edward's gaze flickered downward, stricken with the anguish of a husband betrayed, the atmosphere shifted. "It was not me," he whispered, the shock coursing through him. Yet Poirot remained steadfast. "Ah, but the human heart plays tricks, no?" Poirot mused, his eyes glinting with the sharp edge of truth. "It weaves a web of love and hate, of secrets and treacheries. With each revelation, a silent harmony danced. The cadence of betrayal stark against the quietude of the world outside. The final realization loomed, a stolen letter unraveling lives, revealing the hidden layers beneath tragic facades. As Clara absorbed the perfidious truth, her heart ached not just for her own shattered dreams, but for Lucille, a woman whom she might have called friend, yet whom betrayal had rendered a stranger. "How tragic it is, mon ami," Poirot reflected quietly, his voice a whisper tinged with finality, "when the heart in its longing betrays us, spelling our undoing." As the dark truth settled, each character's reality shifted, shadows creeping closer to form again upon the walls, lingering reminders of treachery tightly woven with the fabric of despair. In that dim room, the heavy toll of justice rested in the air, echoing with the cost of love turned to poison, each revelation marred forever within the annals of their entwined lives. Chapter 4. The Shattered Crystal Ball. A sudden crash shattered the oppressive silence, echoing through the dimly lit room, sending shards of fear rippling along the walls. Clara, heart racing, stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat as she gazed at the remnants of the crystal ball that had plummeted from its pedestal, its glittering fragments scattering across the marbled floor like lost dreams. The storm that brewed outside mirrored the chaos within the heart of the grand old manor, whose once stately air had now succumbed to a palpable tension more suffocating than the encroaching darkness. Hercule Poirot entered the room, the flicker of candlelight casting a soft glow that contrasted sharply with the evening's tempest. As he surveyed the scene, his discerning eyes captured the subtle nuances of despair flitting across Clara's features, coupled with the shadowy figures of the three other occupants, whose collective apprehension was as unmistakable as the echoes of thunder rumbling in the distance. "What? A curious calamity, non," he murmured, his voice imbued with an elegant calm, unsettling in its composure. "A shattered crystal ball foretells not merely physical destruction, but also the unraveling of the very web we weave with the threads of our hearts." The first suspect, Edward, stood rigid against the fireplace, his usually confident demeanor seemingly eroded by layers of guilt. An ambitious man entangled in familial loyalties, his heart had become a battleground of envy, particularly after the night of Anton's demise. The stormy atmosphere reflected the tempest within him as he shifted uncomfortably, casting glances between Clara and Lucille, his once assured mask crumbling to reveal the cracks beneath. "It cannot be an omen," he snapped, "only a trifle broken, a mere inconvenience in our dark jest." Poirot observed the telltale flicker in his eyes, the slight tremor in his clenched fist, as he spoke the words that bled dishonesty. Lucille, too, was transformed by the unfolding chaos. The facade of confidence she donned like a mask slipped away as she stepped closer to the shards of glass, kneeling in apparent reverence. "The past speaks through fragments," she whispered, her voice laced with an almost chilling reverence. Poirot noted the tremor in her fingertips, hovering dangerously near the deadly shards, as if drawn by an inexplicable compulsion. A woman joined in conflict with her own emotions. She had concealed love behind the pretense of rivalry, her past with Anton entwined with a longing that brushed dangerously close to self-destruction. Amidst the fractured glass and unsettling emotional landscape, Henry remained an ever-watchful presence, the loyal servant whose devotion to the Forrester family had always seemed unwavering. Yet Poirot sensed an undercurrent slicing beneath Henry's calm exterior, the flicker of anxiety his shifting gaze betrayed. "This is but a sign, perhaps, that our premonitions are all too valid," he spoke softly, even as reparations were in his mind. Harboring a darkness that mimicked the storm outside, with nothing more than a servant's duty to protect, his heart grappled with concealed motives and unyielding fear, a precarious balancing act atop the tightrope of nobility. As the chaos settled momentarily, Poirot began his structured inquiry, observing the creased brows and phoenix-like emotional rises among the suspects. "My friends, let us delve into the depths of this enigma," he invited, his voice cutting through the thick air. "Every emotion exhibited holds its true purpose hidden, each reaction a note in the symphony of our night." Clara's anxious voice fluttered forth, shattered by guilt as she recounted the events leading to Anton's end. I fear I could not see clearly," she stammered, recounting moments cloaked in regret. "With the crystal ball, its visions were mere illusions, as we are." The true descent into confusion began. As Poirot pieced together the fragments, questions revealed paths of suspicion twisting like vines. Edward's defensiveness became a gilded veil, and Lucille's whispers unfurled like a siren's call, each syllable woven with implications on a tightly fraying string. "The past," he purred, "it shapes our present, and lesser truths often lead to greater deception." As he played the notes of their discord, he noted Clara's lingering glance exchanged with Henry, a silent pact that framed the chamber with hidden meanings. He steered the conversation, unveiling connections masked in pleasantries. "Henry, what do you hide beneath your steadfast loyalty?" he inquired, eyeing the crease of guilt shadowing his brow. Clara flinched at the question. Her pulse quickened. "I merely serve," Henry insisted, a hardness creeping into his voice, betraying an edge. Poirot sensed the undercurrents but refrained from revealing his hand, allowing the interplay to dance before him. A husk of denial passed between the three like an electric charge, and with each turn, the atmosphere thickened with tension, colored in shades of betrayal. Then amid the surreal cacophony of fluttering emotions and augmenting suspicion, another calamity beckoned. The crystal ball, a relic rumored to foretell truths yet hidden, now became the centerpiece of their unraveling fates. "Ah, but the glass shattered not without purpose," murmured Poirot as he examined the fragments strewn across the rich fabric of the floor. A metaphor, perhaps, for the illusions we harbor. The first twist emerged, a falsehood he almost succumbed to, a deliberate ruse forged by Edward's attempt to portray himself as the only victim of manipulation. Yet this guise fell short, and Poirot pricked the air with a charge of realization. The cyclical dance of suspicion shifting focus as Lucille's composed exterior began to splinter. But it was Clara, the unsuspecting anchor, who bore the weight of the final revelation. Beneath the frayed threads of her defenses surged a truth that tore apart the facade they'd clung to in shadows. "I saw them together, the night Anton died," she finally confessed, her voice trembling as the storm raged outside. "Lucille and Edward were conspiring." Their whispers traveled through the halls, cloaked in fabrications. The electric charge in the air reached its zenith. Betrayal lingered like storm clouds, saturating every exchange. Lucille's eyes reflected fury and despair, a tempest brewing as her heart fractured beneath the weight of exposure. The final twist emerged, a heart-wrenching revelation that faced them all. Poirot constructed the web of deception, casting light on the shrouded depths. "Edward, perhaps you believed that silencing Anton would quench your torment, ridding you of shadows," he pronounced. Yet it was Lucille who expressed desire, the very desire that birthed envy and destruction. The walls of composure crumbled around Lucille as she bristled against Poirot's unveiling, gasping in disbelief at her entangled fate. "Mon ami," Poirot concluded, "how tragic it is that love can twist to betrayal, leading us all to our undoing, much like the shards of your crystal ball. Each piece reflects not merely the future, but the consequences etched in our hearts." The darkness deepened around them, shadows converging in on intimate whispers of shattered dreams and lost truths. The storm outside, howling in discord, echoed the tragedy unfolding within the walls of the manor, leaving the weight of betrayal suspended in the air, unyielding and forever haunting. Chapter 5. Secrets Beneath the Surface. The wind howled like a banshee, and the rain lashed against the windows of the grand old manor, a symphony of chaos that heralded the darkest night yet. A flickering candle cast wavering shadows upon the walls, illuminating an unsettling tableau. Clara, her pallid face betraying her unease. Edward curled tightly in on himself like a withered flower. And Lucille, her eyes gleaming with an almost feverish intensity. And then, in the corner, Henry, the loyal servant, standing as immovable as a statue, despite the tempestuous atmosphere that crackled with tension around them. Clara's heartbeat echoed violently in her ears as the room filled with a heavy silence, punctuated only by the sound of the storm outside. The previous revelations had shattered what little composure anyone had held, and now a new fracture threatened to emerge, deepening the abyss between each of them. Poirot, poised and immaculately styled as always, stepped forward, the unique cadence of his thoughts entwined with the desperate narrative unfolding before him. "Ah, mes amis," he began, his voice dripping with intrigue. "The storm outside is but a mere reflection of the tempest swirling within your hearts. Let us not shy from the secrets that dwell beneath the surface." His shrewd gaze traversed the room, absorbing every nuance. The twitch of Clara's fingers, the sharp breath Lucille took as she attempted to mask her emotions, and the subtle withdrawal of Henry as if he were merely a ghost among the living. "I ask you what lies concealed beneath your facades?" Poirot inquired, his tone gentle yet laced with authority. "For every soul harbors secrets, some bright as diamonds, others dark as the deepest recesses of despair." In that moment Edward's bravado splintered, and a flicker of anxiety crossed his face. "Secrets?" he scoffed, yet the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "We are all honest here, Poirot. Why dredge up shadows from the past?" "Ah, but honesty, mon ami, can be but a mask," Poirot mused, drawing closer to Edward, whose defiance faltered under scrutiny. "You, who stand on the precipice of envy and anger, harbor sentiments that dance dangerously close to destruction. Like the tempest outside, your emotions can shatter lives." With the unsettling atmosphere encroaching and the revelation of hidden truths lurking just beyond their veils, Poirot orchestrated their discourse, guiding it deftly towards the center of their discontent, the unresolved murder of Anton. Each suspect, in their own right, presented a carefully curated persona, yet the details unwittingly betrayed their carefully constructed facades. Clara, the once innocent soul caught in a web of betrayal, had begun to unravel, her glances flitting nervously towards Henry, as though he were an anchor in the storm. Lucille, too, was a tempest of her own making, her emotions tied precariously to the memory of Anton, whose allure had drawn her in like a moth to a flame. And Henry, the servant, remained a steadfast presence, yet his eyes shimmered with an inner strife that begged for recognition. As Poirot delved deeper, he opened the floodgates, unraveling threads both luminous and dark. Clara's hands trembled as she recounted the events leading up to Anton's fateful night, each word spilling forth in a stream of guilt and sorrow. "I saw it, I did," she whispered, the weight of her confession heavy upon her shoulders. The way Lucille looked at him, it ignited a flame of jealousy I could hardly contain. The room seemed to constrict, her raw honesty igniting a burgeoning tension. Lucille recoiled, her features shifting as though struck. "You speak lies born of envy," she raged. But even as her voice rose, Poirot detected the cracks in her bravado. There was truth veiled beneath her fury, secrets that begged to be unearthed. "Truth, dear Lucille, is often entangled within a web of emotions," Poirot countered, allowing a moment of silence to envelop them. "Could it be that your passion, intertwined with desire, gave rise to a sinister misunderstanding of it all?" The storm outside intensified, and amidst the raging tempest, Poirot caught another subtle clue, an intoxicating bouquet of lavender wafting through the air, an odor that seemed discordant amidst the storm's oppressive scent. "Ah, but my dear friends," he proclaimed, drawing their attention, "what aroma is this? A delicate trace of lavender? It does not belong in this morbid gathering, would you not agree?" Henry shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting towards the window as shadows danced in the corners of his eyes. "I often bring in the scented oils for the evening," he insisted, yet a steely glint glimmered within him, revealing an undercurrent of agitation. "Indeed," Poirot replied, "yet perhaps this fragrance is more of a message than simply a preference. One scent, a reminder of something lost, something hidden." With skilled prose, Poirot weaved the narrative, presenting possibilities painted with the hues of suspicion. "Perhaps it is the scent of memories that linger, uninvited in our hearts," he continued, his tone steady like the ticking of a clock. "It might transport us to moments we long to forget, or those we wish to possess." Yet as he pieced the puzzles together, a stark red herring emerged, heralding an unexpected twist that altered the atmosphere within the room yet again. "Clara, tell me," he said, "did you not hold in your possession a letter? One potentially revealing intentions that simmered beneath the surface?" Clara reared back, horror etched across her features. "No, I burned it, I swear," she gasped, but her eyes flickered with something more. Was it guilt or remorse? Poirot's focus sharpened. Her vehement denial sparked the faintest of doubts. The tension mounted, a gripping silence enveloping them, like a mist until it shattered, as Clara spoke once more, her voice dying to a whisper. It was a letter from Anton, addressed to Lucille. Poirot watched as shock captivated Lucille's face, transforming her expression into one of disbelief that almost appeared too orchestrated, too practiced. "You lie," she spat, yet the rawness of a painful truth echoed within the chords of her voice. Therein lay the revelation, the match that ignited a conflagration of realizations. At last Poirot gathered them all, a matador and a ring of fences, prepared to unveil the heart of the matter, that had been woven with threads of betrayal and deception. "In the end, dear Lucille, your connection with Anton was indeed deep, yet your desire to shield him from Clara unveiled your complicity. The ultimate betrayal was your desperate grasping for his affections." Meanwhile, Edward's envy of Anton's place in this intricate tapestry of emotions guided him to a dark place, where decisions turned deadly. The final twist was closer now, one that brought them perilously close to a shattering truth. "Ah, but Clara, you too longed for a love entwined with hope, did you not?" Poirot continued. "Yet this letter, clandestinely forged in moments of betrayal, became a token that kindled your ultimate resolve." Their eyes widened as realization flooded their features, hearts pounding with the weight of untold events surging through them. Poirot could almost see their souls writhing beneath the fabric of their crafted lives, secrets binding them tighter than any chains could. After all, beneath the eye-to-eye surface, where darkness breeds, lay the true essence of human betrayal. As his words settled in the silence, electrifying the air, Poirot allowed the darkness to deepen around them. The heart, my dear friends, can be both a sanctuary and a prison, where love festers into resentment and desire morphs to destruction. With that he paused, sealing the fate of each member of their tempestuous gathering, a dark night meting out justice in a world lost to betrayal. In the flickering candlelight, as shadows danced cruelly upon the walls, there arose an echo of their intertwined tragedies, forever marred, forever bound by the secrets beneath the surface. Chapter 6. The Alluring Illusionist. A sudden crash of thunder reverberated through the creaking manor, sending tremors through the strained air, as if the very walls themselves were lamenting the sins buried within. Lightning illuminated the parlor in strobe-like flashes, revealing the terrified faces of 3 lost souls. Each was tightly woven into a tapestry of secrets, despair, and unrelenting suspicion. At the center of this maelstrom stood Hercule Poirot, resplendent in his tailored suit, the flicker of candlelight reflecting off his keen eyes, those of a man who could see beyond facades and into the darkness lurking beneath. "It appears, mes amis, that tragedy has once more unleashed its cruel hand," Poirot murmured, his voice calm amidst the chaos. As he surveyed the room, his gaze sharpened, a perceptive mix of intuition and intellect guiding him. The body of the recently departed Clara lay sprawled on the floor, her lifeless eyes gazing into an eternal void. A pocket watch, long since stopped, lay askew beside her, an emblem of time frozen by the shadow of death that had swept through their lives like a thief in the night. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the manor, punctuated by the echo of fury and betrayal that hung thick in the air. Suspicion slithered like a snake among the survivors. Edward, a man brooding in disastrous guilt as he clutched a framed portrait of Clara. Lucille, whose eyes darted furtively, betraying an inner tempest of anguish and unresolved longing. And Henry, whose stoic demeanor could not mask the silent turmoil raging just beneath the surface. They were all bound by a shared web of history intertwined with jealousy and vengeance, dancing precariously on the edge of an abyss. As Poirot knelt beside the fallen Clara, he caught the faintest scent of lavender, a weary, cherished fragrance clinging desperately to her weary form, an unsettling reminder of the hidden truths buried within their hearts. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he whispered to himself, deliberately shifting that weighty truth from his inner monologue into the charged atmosphere of the room. "Who among you can reveal what truly transpired in these darkened halls?" he inquired slowly, his eyes surveying each suspect with an unwavering intensity. Lucille's voice trembled as she broke the silence that had cocooned them. I hardly knew Clara well. How could I have orchestrated such a cowardly act? But even as she spoke, Poirot noticed the quiver of trepidation in her voice, the slight tremor of her hands that betrayed her otherwise composed facade. Edward, shifting uneasily, interjected, "What is the purpose in playing games with words? Clara was my confidant. My—" He paused, choked by emotion, then resumed, "We had our agreements. I loved her." The sudden outburst betrayed the fragility of his professed love, revealing a man grappling with his own demons, one now shrouded within an aura of guilt and uncertainty. Poirot's contemplative gaze fixed upon Henry, the loyal servant whose quiet composure seemed to echo a deeper pain. "And you, Henry, these shadows do not lie lightly upon your shoulders. Can you elaborate on your presence on that fateful night?" he queried, a tinge of authority lacing his inquiry. "I merely followed my duties, Monsieur Poirot," Henry answered, yet the tension in his voice cast doubt on his words. "I was preparing the evening tea, as per usual, amidst the whim of the storm. Yet were you not drawn by the myriad of emotions clinging to this room? Or perhaps drawn to Clara herself?" Poirot pressed, the soft but resolute manner of his questioning weaving an intricate tapestry of accusation and unrevealed truths that ensnared each participant. As they spoke, hints of discontent flitted between the trio, like phantoms, emotions rising with the thunder that echoed outside. Poirot, discerning the subtle but telling glances exchanged between Lucille and Edward, shifted the conversation. "Tell me, were you not both in the parlor just moments before this unspeakable event transpired?" he asked pointedly, his discerning eyes flicking between the two. "It was simply a shared moment of camaraderie. Nothing more," Lucille responded sharply, the defensiveness in her tone echoing in the gaps of her own insecurities. Yet Poirot could see the underlying guilt shadowing her every word, an unmistakable conflict revealed by a strain not lost on the observant detective. In a masterful stroke of deft intuition, Poirot directed the narrative under the guise of inquiries. "Perhaps there is a letter, mon ami, that can clarify the tensions dancing about us? A letter forged in secrecy?" he suggested with an air of intrigue, watching the subtle signs of anxiousness ripple through the room. Edward's composure faltered. "What do you know of letters?" "Clara never mentioned anything to me. Nothing of significance." A fleeting expression crossed Lucille's face, an amalgamation of anger and realization, as she suspected something delicate was being unearthed. "You would speak of letters," she challenged Edward, "yet it was our clandestine meetings and your whispered promises that made me feel alive. What claim do you have to innocence now?" And just as suspicion danced in an intoxicating waltz, Poirot found the key that turned the lock of ambiguity, an unsigned letter that Clara had clutched in her hand, now irretrievably lost among the maelstrom of chaos. "Ah, but my friends," he crooned, "the heart is a fickle arbiter of desires, sometimes leading to the brink of despair." A shudder enveloped the room, eyes narrowed in suspicion as Poirot peeled back the layers of deceit one by one. "Edward, you resented Anton for what he represented to Lucille. And Lucille, your love for Anton, illuminated your heart yet transformed into a cruel desire for revenge. Did it not?" Poirot's voice grew sharper, more resonant against the backdrop of the raging storm, but each accusation reverberated with the deepening tension among them, weaving a cacophony of confusion and fury. It was within this fray that Poirot realized the depth of the illusion, a grotesque puppetry of hidden emotions entwined with layers of stylish betrayal. Clara's lifeless form was merely a reflection of the deeper currents teasing through their existence. In the electrifying stillness that hung before the revelation, the true betrayal emerged. Clara had discovered messages exchanged between Lucille and Anton, messages that contained a love so profound, it morphed into envy rather than solace, igniting Clara's determination and desperation to reveal the truth at any cost. With a measured breath, Poirot finally faced the broken assembly. It was not mere jealousy that drove Clara to confront you all, but the fear of losing the love she desperately sought herself. The camera shifted to capture the crumbling resolve of each character, revealing the labyrinth of emotions that bound them. The viewers sat at the edge of their seats, breaths held as Poirot delivered the final twist. And thus, my dear friends, we arrive at an unsettling truth. The letters, the alliances, and the grievances united to manifest in a dark well of desire that led to a most tragic end. As footsteps echoed in the distance, Poirot turned once more to each specter of regret that had gathered by the shadow of betrayal. In the end, when the heart seeks to manipulate, it becomes the most alluring of illusions, one that steals lives and molds destinies into tragic stories. With those closing words, a heavy silence engulfed the room, thick with unresolved horror and the chilling clarity of souls ensnared in their despair. The camera zoomed out to capture the storm-tossed manor, where the bond of trust had been irrevocably shattered and shadows danced, forever haunted by the alluring illusions of love and betrayal. The final flicker of candlelight surrendered to the darkness, sealing the secrets behind closed doors, where echoes of sorrow would forever linger. Chapter 7. A Broken Trust. The chilling wail of the wind echoed through the desolate manor, wrapping eerily around the fragile forms huddled within its walls. Thunder crashed overhead, casting flickering shadows that seemed to dance with malevolent intent as the candlelight trembled in response. At this hour there existed a dreadful silence, one that weighed heavily upon the air, laden with secrets whispered only by the shadows. To an intelligent eye, the atmosphere was fraught with tension. Even the portraits that lined the walls seemed to glare disapprovingly at the chaotic lives unfolding beneath their watchful scrutiny. Hercule Poirot entered the room with a fluid grace, the brilliance of his tailored suit stark against the darkened backdrop of despair. A cold chill settled at the nape of his neck, but it was not the storm beyond that unnerved him. No, it was the very essence of betrayal that lingered, a foul spirit clinging to the occupants of the room, now bound by a malevolent force. The murmurings of treachery were palpable, lingering in the air like the scent of damp earth after a storm, heavy with anticipation and trepidation. Clara's tragic demise had not merely severed lives, it had unshackled a tempest of emotions that threatened to engulf them all. "Mon ami," Poirot began, his voice calm but imbued with the weight of startling clarity. "We find ourselves entwined in a tapestry woven by deceit and betrayal, a broken trust that must be rediscovered, lest we all fall prey to our darker desires." His keen eyes scanned the contorted faces of those before him, Edward, Lucille, and Henry. Each bore the scars of their hidden histories, their insecurities laid bare beneath Poirot's scrutinous gaze. Edward, once the embodiment of brooding despair, sat rigidly, clutching a handkerchief until it grew damp with the sweat of anxiety. Only weeks prior, he had professed eternal love for Clara, but the harsh truth now gnawed at his conscience, the bitter taste of guilt harrowing him. Lucille, whose delicate features, contorted under the storms of emotion, appeared as if she were both drawn to and repulsed by the memories of her affair with Anton, a man no longer present, yet embodying the shadow of forbidden passion. And then there was Henry, the loyal servant whose stoicism bordered on complicit silence. He appeared detached from the emotional chaos, but perhaps contained a tempest of his own. "What transpired during those final hours?" Poirot probed, his tone deceptively soft, yet tinged with urgency. "Were you united in sorrow, or did a deeper betrayal pulse through the very veins of this household?" "Poirot," Edward replied, his voice a rasp, "we were all shocked by Clara's death. How could we have orchestrated such a tragedy?" His eyes flared with barely concealed anger. The defensiveness he wore was but a thin veil over a deeper guilt that writhed beneath the surface. Lucille, on the other hand, struggled to maintain composure, the slightest tremor betraying her facade. I scarcely knew Clara," she stammered, emotion roiling just below the surface, the tension thickening the air between them. "All I wanted was to feel free, to love without the chains of expectation." Her words, however, rang hollow. The truth was wrapped in layers of jealousy and longing, a potent cocktail that could poison any connection. Poirot's intuition tingled. The cracks in their stories were obvious, revealing the tangled web of lies beneath. He paced slowly, allowing each character's discomfort to heighten, his sharp mind absorbing whispers of betrayal. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, he murmured thoughtfully. His eyes danced over the subtle, yet telling, physical cues, the fidgeting hands, darting glances, and the way breath quickened with loaded silence. May I remind you all that the storm outside is but a mirror to our present anguish? Shadows are nefarious friends. They twist truth into lies. The revelation hung in the air as Poirot focused intently on Henry. You were steadfast and loyal, yet your silence speaks louder than words. What were your intentions during Clara's last night? I was merely attending to my duties, Monsieur Poirot, Henry replied, his voice cool, albeit lacking warmth. Nothing extraordinary occurred in my service that evening. Yet Poirot could see the cracks materializing in his serene facade, the unspoken words tugging at his conscience. Do confess, mon ami, Poirot responded, his voice a mellifluous yet stern guide. What secrets do these four walls hold? Emotions swirl like the restless tempest outside, blurring the lines between affection and disdain. A moment of stillness blanketed the room, punctuated only by the drumming rain against the window panes. Heads turned towards one another, piercing looks intensified as a volley of accusations rose hesitantly between them. Words flowed like a swift river, swollen with desperation, a current of untruth veiling their true intentions. Anger suffused the atmosphere, a pressure that promised an impending storm far grander than the cacophony unleashed beyond the manor's clutches. Then it happened, a pivotal moment, a short yet sharp breath. Caught. Poirot had noticed a small detail that shifted everything, a delicate silver locket that hung from Lucille's neck, glinting with faint echoes of time past, caught the flickering candlelight. It appeared out of place, an emblem of something deeper. Ah, but what do we have here, he mused, his eyes glimmering. It's just an old trinket, Lucille offered, her voice quivering. But Poirot heard the tremor, a loss masked by triviality. It bears no significance to our current plight. Yet, one might argue otherwise, Poirot countered with deliberate calmness. This locket belonged to Clara, did it not? You have taken a memento, a survivor's relic from a past that still haunts you. What claim does it hold upon your heart? Initially silent, Lucille's eyes bore the weight of grief, a tempest of regret swirling within. She would have wanted it back, she said finally, her voice a whisper thick with sorrow. But I was too late. Poirot leaned forward, hands clasped together, savoring the tension. Ah, the tender bonds of trust. They erode easily when secrets dance upon the precipice. But do we not deserve to know the truth? Was there something in that locket that set off a chain of events none of us could have anticipated? The question echoed like the thunder outside. A ripple of anxiety passed among them. Perhaps the locket led to another letter, a variegated piece of evidence that binds you all together in ways you do not yet see, Poirot theorized, each word a fragment of truth slicing through the veils of mistrust. The wheels turned in his mind, piecing together the intentions behind every glance, every whispered word. What transpired leads him on this trail of emotional debris, trailing back to Clara's inevitable confrontation with truths too heavy to bear. Poirot's insistent probing unearthed layers of stories entangled in betrayal. The letter contained threats of revelation, and Clara had gathered evidence to wield as leverage, a planned confrontation that spiraled inexorably towards disaster. Did Clara's aspirations to expose your secrets drive you to silence her? Poirot's voice thundered, reverberating within the chamber. Then came Lucille's revelation, like a dam breaking. It was not just betrayal, it was layered with heartbreak. I loved Anton. I never meant for it to go this far, she confessed as anguish thrummed through her every word. Clara knew. She was the only one who could slip the truth like poison into the hearts of men. A shifting dynamic crystallized, and Edward's anguished shout reverberated through the walls. You would throw our lives away for love unreturned? All the while I believed you were my friend. Poirot's calculating mind shifted seamlessly. With two confrontations, the truth was dawning around him, blinding in its clarity. The emotional revelations expose the irony entwining their lives, bonds fraying in a tempest of desire, betrayal painting their tapestry in shades of crimson. As the confronting words spun around the room, Poirot could finally feel the strands aligning. This variable was all that remained to ensure his next move would expose the true murderer. The revelation came like slow thunder rolling through a dreary summer sky. "Dear friend," Poirot endeavored, his voice resonating with the crescendo of chaos, "it was not solely a betrayal born of envy. Rather, the very tapestry we weave is often soaked in sorrow. Each stitch holds a memory entwining you deeper in malice. In the end, Clara wished to confront betrayal by revealing your darkest secrets." A heart-wrenching silence enveloped the room, transforming heated arguments into hushed whispers of realization. Poirot stood, illuminating the shadows with the truth, each confessor a player in a tragic play, leading to a revelation they barely wished to confront. And with a grim sense of justice, he delivered his final line. "What a twisted web we weave when we abandon that which holds our trust dear." The raffirie de anguish woven through the air matched the tempest outside as Poirot turned, leaving behind the echoes of broken hearts, sealing their forgotten past behind the doors of the manor, forever haunted by the ghosts of their trust betrayed. Chapter 8: Whispers of the Past. A low, keening wail sliced through the silence of the night, a spectral echo that rose above the relentless drum of rain against the manor's window panes. The sound was a lamentation so haunting that it might have been torn from the very fabric of the human soul. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with dread, an unspoken tension binding the occupants together beneath the flickering light of the candles, their flames dancing wildly in response to the gusts of wind. Hercule Poirot, standing at the threshold of the drawing room, took in the scene before him, a tableau of concealed grievances and stark emotions. Clad in a perfectly tailored suit, his imposing presence seemed to absorb the shadows swirling around him. "Mon ami," he intoned, his voice breaking the suffocating silence. "The darkness here within speaks not merely of the tempest outside, but of deeper, more insidious storms that brew within the hearts of men." Before him, three figures stood, each shrouded in the vestiges of their own secrets. Edward, the brooding artist, stood hunched over with clenched fists, his ashen face illuminated by the candlelight, a fearful ghost haunted by the specter of regret. Just weeks prior, he had whispered sweet nothings to Clara, but guilt nagged at him now, an insistent reminder of the betrayal hidden beneath his romantic facade. Lucille, delicate and frail, with her porcelain skin and trembling hands, clutched a silver locket tightly against her chest, a bitter-sweet relic of her past that bore the weight of love unrequited. And then there was Henry, the loyal servant, whose stoic demeanor concealed the shadows lurking in his own heart, a man perpetually caught between fealty and guilt. "Clara's passing has cast a pall over this house," Poirot remarked, his keen eyes scanning each face, discerning the unspoken truths buried within. "But tell me, my friends, did her demise spring from the depths of despair, or did it conceal the roots of betrayal?" The question hung heavy in the air, and Edward was the first to respond, anger cutting through his grief. "How could you suggest such a thing, Poirot? We are in mourning. None of us would bring harm to Clara." The tremor in his voice betrayed a man teetering on the edge of a precipice, one perhaps driven by guilt rather than mere sorrow. As Poirot observed the flickerings of deception and loss, he felt the deep-rooted connections among them flutter like ghosts, a web woven by shared history. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he murmured, turning his gaze toward Lucille. "You seem lost in memories, yet your eyes reveal something more, an escape masked as affection." Lucille recoiled, the locket glinting like a beacon in her hands. "I knew Clara more than anyone here. She understood the chaos in my heart, the love for Anton that I could never embrace openly," she confessed, her voice a fragile whisper. "But I would never harm her." "Yet she did hold the truth in her grasp," Poirot pressed on, hesitant to reveal the full weight of his suspicions, but unwilling to shy away from the hidden layers of their tragedy. "Her knowledge of your affair could have offered her both power and peril. Did that not put you in a precarious position? As they bombarded one another with their revelations, Poirot busied himself in observance, noting the way Henry's eyes darted across the room. You claim to serve, yet your silence resonates louder than any confession you could offer. Poirot's tone shifted to one of authoritative calm, forcing Henry to meet his gaze. What burden do you carry, my friend? Are you not privy to the intricate arrangements of your employer's affairs? I did my job, Monsieur Poirot, Henry replied, his voice low but determined, masking the inner turbulence that brewed within. What could I possibly have to gain from Clara's demise? She was kind to me. Poirot turned to the storm pounding outside, contemplating the tempest within the manor mirrored in the chaos of the elements. Clara had left behind a tangled legacy of trust, betrayed, and love crushed. A legacy that offered clues sharper than the wind howling through the treetops. The atmosphere thickened, punctuated by the sound of a sudden clap of thunder, yet Poirot held steadfast, aware he stood at the precipice of revelation. In the ensuing silence, a bitter truth surfaced with explosive ferocity. Poirot picked up on the small details, discomfort flickering across each suspect's face like distant lightning. We shall examine the locket closer, he suggested, prompting Lucille to recoil. It's merely a trinket, she stammered, though Poirot sensed a pulse of significance lurking in her protests. I have no need to explain myself. It carries no weight on this matter. But is it not the weight that burdens the heart? Poirot pressed, observing the pallor on Lucille's cheeks deepen. For I can see that this locket carries not merely the memory of a friend, but the echoes of unspoken resentments. With the storm raging outside, the truce amassed, swirling like dark clouds above their heads, one thunderous crack revealed the first twist in their treacherous dance. Edward's face shifted from fury to despair, each accusation he hurled at Lucille morphing into something graver than themselves. You loved Anton. You let your jealousy consume you, and you watched her fail. His accusations were sharp, each word aimed to pierce. Enough, Poirot interjected, stepping between them as a mediator in the chaos. Jealousy can fester like a deadly wound, driving one, perhaps even you, Edward, to dark deeds. But in this web, what if your desperation was not solely aimed at Lucille? A flash of realization passed between Edward and Henry, an inexplicable bond forged in the loom of guilt. Just as Poirot began to piece together their entangled truths, an unseen betrayal unfurled. The implication of a secret letter hidden in the recesses of Clara's belongings came to light. A letter that disclosed an undisclosed alliance between Henry and Edward, one sustained by a shared greed unbeknownst to Lucille. As Poirot navigated this treacherous landscape, he glimpsed the depth of their treachery. It was not merely betrayal at the hands of love gone awry, but a sinister pact formed through mutual deception. The hammer fell when Poirot unveiled their treachery, a confession exposed amid the tears and allegations lurching in unison, a sharp twist leading to their collective culpability. As the final pieces aligned, he gazed upon them, capturing the torment laid bare, like broken glass at their feet. Ah, how the heart can deceive when trust is abandoned. Their shocked silence echoed louder than even the storm outside as heartache unspooled across the room. The phantom whispers of their past reverberated within the chamber, a tragic symphony caught between love and betrayal. Poirot, surveying the desolation enveloping them, delivered the final truth with a quiet resolution. Most tragically, it is the secrets we keep from ourselves that carve the deepest of wounds. Each confessor told a tale that spiraled toward a future forever entwined in betrayal, leaving them to confront the shadows they had created, forever, haunted by what had been lost. Chapter 9. The Final Game of Deception. A scream shattered the stillness of the night, a sound so primal and engulfing that it rose above the pounding of rain against the manor's windows. Poirot, with an instinct honed by years of observation, turned sharply toward the source, an elegant yet terrified figure stumbling into the drawing room, her hands stained crimson. It was Lucille, eyes wide, her breath coming in quick gasps. Clara's locket, It holds more than memories, she gasped before crumpling to the floor, twisting the silver trinket in her fingers as if it were a talisman against the horrors she had invoked. The storm outside raged, but it paled in comparison to the tempest that brewed within the hearts of those gathered in the dim light of the manor. Mon ami, Poirot began, his voice calm amidst the chaos, the truth weaves itself into the fabric of the heart, and today it is tangled beyond reckoning. He moved into the room with deliberate grace, his sharp gaze sweeping over the assembled, each struck by shock and fear. Edward, the artist with his turbulent soul, stared at Lucille with a mix of rage and confusion. Henry, the loyal servant, stood rigid as stone, as doubt clawed at his conscience, casting a long shadow over his unwavering facade. The locket, an innocuous trinket perhaps, had suddenly become the pivot upon which their fates would turn. However, Poirot had learned that despair often masks deeper motives. He approached Lucille, extending a hand to draw her up from her fallen state. Tell me, Lucille, what darkness have you unearthed hidden within that locket? She hesitated, glancing furtively at Henry and Edward, then lowered her voice to a mere whisper. Clara was planning to use its power against us, our secrets, our lies. She intended to expose everything. With this revelation, the air shifted, thickening with unspoken accusations and the weight of betrayal. In the flickering candlelight, Poirot noticed the muscles in Edward's jaw tense. We all hold secrets, he intoned thoughtfully, but not all secrets deserve to be shared. His words hung ominously in the silence. What was Clara truly after, if not freedom and vengeance? As if triggered by the storm itself, the lights flickered, casting ominous shadows that danced across the walls. Edward, unable to contain his anger, swung towards Lucille. You loved Anton, he barked, but it was Clara who sought to ruin us all with her self-righteousness. The accusation pierced the air, leaving a momentary stillness before Lucille's indignant protest filled the void. I loved her, you fool, more than you could ever understand. Why would I want to harm someone who saw my struggle? Poirot stepped in, ever the mediator. Doubt spirals when emotions cloud judgment. Edward, your allegiance to Clara seems precariously balanced on a knife's edge. Tell me, what would you gain if her secrets remained buried? The artist faltered, his frustration visibly morphing into something more sinister, a hint of fear crawling beneath his skin. Yet deeper truths lingered, veiled by a thick cloak of suspicion. Poirot turned his attention to Henry, whose immovable countenance cracked under scrutiny. And you, my steadfast friend, did you remain loyal to Clara until her end, or did you find solace in her silence? Henry's eyes flitted from Poirot to Edward, the tension humming like a taut wire, ready to snap. I merely served, he replied, though unease quivered at the edge of his tone. News of Clara's complex web began to unfurl, revealing a tapestry of betrayal and unspoken alliances. Perhaps in your loyalty there lay a desire for freedom, Henry, Poirot suggested. A chance to rise above subservience, even at the cost of her life? As the storm intensified, so did the conflict. Edward thrust blame in Lucille's direction, alleging a conspiracy against Clara. Yet Poirot perceived flashes of deeper torment embedded in that fury. Each accusation unraveled another thread of their interwoven stories, and as their barbed exchanges continued, Poirot listened intently to their words, sifting through the ash of deception that hung heavy in the air. The ticking clock in the corner marked each passing second, growing more insistent, a metronome foretelling the required resolution. Then as the storm reached its zenith, Poirot felt a stirring, a clue buried amidst the chaos. This letter hidden among Clara's belongings, what of it? He paused, awaiting the effect of his words. An emotional letter connecting you all, a pact among the damned. A tangible silence descended, charged with dread. Lucille's fragile mask shifted, and Henry's jaw tightened, an exchange of unspoken fears flickering between them. We had our reasons, he finally admitted in a low growl, but the admission betrayed more than mere complicity. It was a splitting of consciousness, revealing the dark recesses of a chained heart. Clara held more than her secrets in her hands, Poirot mused, realization shedding light upon their darkness. Your entanglements were not limited to love alone, but greed, ambition, and the intoxicating promise of freedom. Yet these very desires clouded your intentions. Then came a revelation, a sudden break in the narrative. But who truly is the architect of this tragedy? Poirot posed, turning to each, but his piercing gaze returned to Lucille. Your silence speaks volumes. What will you reveal? Lucille quivered, torn between betrayal and the lurking truth. In a moment of undeniable vulnerability, she relented. I was to meet Clara that night. I was to tell her everything. That letter was a blueprint of her plans. In a crescendo of emotions, Poirot absorbed the implications. Clara had plotted a game, but not just any game. The final twist awaited, hidden beneath layers of complicity and misunderstanding. A flurry of realization culminated as Poirot pieced together the alarming truth. Clara had known of her own impending fate, orchestrating the very chaos that ensued. Thus began the unraveling. Ah, how cunning is the heart that tricks those it desires to protect, Poirot stated knowingly. How tragic that Clara's ill-fated ambitions entangled her closest allies in an inescapable web of treachery. Betrayal indeed is the most exquisite cruelty. His voice resonated throughout the room as he locked eyes with each suspect. And now we stand upon the precipice of justice, a game where none emerge unscathed. As the rain pounded relentlessly on, Poirot's final line dropped resolutely into the charged atmosphere. In unveiling the heart's deception, be reminded, my friends, that the greatest tragedy lies not within the shadow of betrayal, but in the sinister truth that we oft wish to hide from ourselves. The storm outside raged on, but within the manor the embers of truth flickered brightly, leaving their fates entangled forevermore, as they faced the ghosts of their own making. Chapter 10. The Confession That Changes Everything. The air was thick with tense anticipation, as a single word shattered the suffocating silence that had enveloped the dimly lit drawing room. Murder! Lucille's voice rang out like a death knell, her pallor echoing the ghostly glow of the candles flickering weakly against the onslaught of the storm outside. The tempest raged, thunder rumbling ominously, adding a sinister cadence to the drama that unfurled within those four walls. In that moment, the flickering light played tricks with the shadows, concealing and revealing truths lurking just beyond perception. Poirot stood a mere breath away from Lucille, his gaze piercing through the tension, dissecting the chaos with exquisite precision. Mon ami, he said, his tone calm yet weighted with an unspoken urgency, what is this monstrous act you speak of? As the storm battered the manor, with a ferocity that mirrored the turmoil stirring within the trio of witnesses, each face betrayed a cocktail of emotions, confusion, horror, and perhaps, most tellingly, fear. Edward, wringing his hands, his artist's demeanor transformed into that of afraid ease, stumbled back, his eyes darting between Lucille and Poirot. What nonsense is this, he spat, his voice a mix of incredulity and desperation. Clara has simply gone too far in her games. She has always enjoyed theatrics. But Poirot's keen ears caught the undercurrent in Edward's tone, a quiver that belied his bravado, revealing an inner turmoil battling against the notion of loss, perhaps even guilt. Henry, a loyal servant attached to Clara's estate like a shadow, stood rigid, arms crossed over his chest defensively, his brow furrowed, betraying an unsettling concoction of anxiety and anticipation. Clara was known for her secrets, but murder? His voice faltered, as if struggling to comprehend the depths to which their entangled lives had now plummeted. Surely she cannot be gone. Ezra. Poirot observed these three unraveling souls. He sensed, as ever, the undercurrents at play, tension lurking like an unseen predator in the corners of the room. Each participant in this darkening tableau held a piece of the sordid puzzle. Yet as they stood before him, the layers of complication and lies veiled their truths. Stepping toward the grand fireplace, shadow dancing across his angular features, Poirot inquired, "Tell me, Lucille, how do you know of this foul play? What led you to utter such grave accusations?" Lucille swallowed hard, her hand instinctively clutching the locket, a talisman that had heralded both memories and mischief. I saw Clara, but it was not a vision of life, she began, her voice trembling like the candle's flames. She sought me out in the garden. I heard her scream. The entire room leaned in, the weight of her words hanging thickly in the air. But Clara has always been full of life. How could she scream? Edward interjected, desperately clinging to the remnants of a denial that felt more fragile than hope. She was conflicted over her letter, meant to expose our deepest fears. But what you suggest? But the human heart. It hides many things, Poirot mused silently, prowling through the layers of deceit that cloaked these individuals. It was imperative to strip away the false bravado and reveal the intent hidden underneath. I believe we have yet to uncover the heart of the matter. Poirot's voice, a soothing balm against the rising storm compelled them forward as he encouraged Lucille to detail her account. No one intended for her to die, she whispered, tears threading down her cheeks. But she mentioned she knew something of dark pacts, of alliances that tore at the seams of our very souls. The storm was not the only thing raging that night. Poirot watched closely, noticing a flicker of panic in Edward's gaze as he absorbed Lucille's revelations. What must one do to silence such knowledge? Henry's question hung, heavy. Clara took an interest in secrets, and secrets beget more secrets. What if someone wished to prevent her from sharing them? The rancorous scent of treachery wafted through the air, thicker than the rain that pelted the windows. Poirot knew he must tread carefully amidst this intricate web of accusations. Tell me, Edward, he said, turning his attention upon the artist, what of your recent rendezvous with Clara? Were you perhaps beneath the veil of friendship, plotting to protect your own self-interests? Edward's face darkened, shadows dancing across his features. The honesty inherent in his soul warred against the silkier strands of self-preservation. I cared for her, yes, but that care was poisoned by my desire to protect myself from ruin. How perverse the heart can be in moments of fear, Poirot mused before casting his gaze back upon Henry. And you, dear Henry, what secrets do you harbor in your unwavering loyalty? It is often the loyal servant who knows the most, woven into the fabric of intrigue. With a deepening furrow of his brow, Henry replied, I stood by her side, but only a fool would disregard the potential for treachery. Clara played her cards close and devised her schemes without care for those caught unwittingly in her web. As shadows lengthened and the storm roared ever louder, Poirot pieced together a chilling tableau, a tragic comedy fueled by jealousy, betrayal, and desperation. In understated elegance, he gathered the threads, leading to their inevitable unraveling. What if it was not simply Clara's ambition to expose, but a more desperate move to control the very play she created? In that moment, the atmosphere shifted palpably when Edward's eyes lit with a ghastly realization, and his words tumbled forth unbidden. What if she foretold her own demise? What if the truth lay hidden not merely in the heart of friendship, but in a betrayal that crept among us perennially, fueling our resentments? The air thickened, holding them hostage. Poirot stood still, then advanced to his drawing room, mind absorbing every detail. My friends, he spoke with an unmistakable calm. It indeed seems that Clara orchestrated not just revenge, but an exquisite twist that binds you all. As the tempest reached a crescendo outside, a knock cascaded through the stillness, reverberating like an ominous heartbeat. Poirot turned, and with a sense of foreboding, he opened the door. An officer stood there. We found the missing piece, sir. The officer's revelation struck like a bolt of thunder, shocking the room into a frigid silence. A confession. As he regaled the tale, a letter from Clara, composed mere days before her demise, grips of horror seized the room. In the end, Poirot laid bare the truth with an unrelenting clarity, unveiling two haunting twists: Edward's betrayal masked as longing, and Henry's unspoken ambitions connected back to Clara in a circle of tragedy. The room fell silent, the gravity of their decisions weighing heavily upon them, each suffocating under the weight of their hearts unmasked. Sometimes, mon ami, Poirot concluded, his eyes scanning the faces of the guilty, The most profound betrayal lies not in the act, but the motivations behind it, an indelible truth that wounds deeper than the blade. The embers dimmed within the hearts surrounding him, forever entangled in the specter of what they had unleashed, a dance with darkness that would haunt them eternally amid the furious storm. Chapter 11. The Unexpected Betrayal. A scream shattered the relentless cadence of the pouring rain, echoing through the crumbling corridors of the manor, sending a chill that nestled deep into the bones of those within. In the heart of the storm, where shadows danced and the flickering candlelight fought against the encroaching darkness, Poirot stood poised, his elegant silhouette framed against the tumult of nature, a solitary figure amidst the chaos. Mon Dieu, he muttered softly, his thoughts racing. What malevolence lurks in the hearts of men? Outside, the tempest raged on, sending torrents of rain against the latticed windows, but within the mansion, the air hung heavy with something far more sinister than mere weather. A palpable tension that clung like a shroud over the multitude of intricate secrets woven into its very fabric. Poirot, having gathered the surviving members of a shattered circle, sensed a shift, a dreadful foreboding that sent shivers coursing through him. Each suspect within that dismal drawing room bore scars of unspoken truce, their faces illuminated only by the trembling candle flames, casting elongated shadows that whispered of betrayal and despair. As the whirlwind of emotions calmed enough for words to punctuate the silence, a figure emerged from the recesses of the room, a young woman with desperate eyes, Caroline. "It cannot be," she cried, clutching a fraying shawl about her shoulders, as if it might shield her from the malevolence that seeped through the walls. "Clara cannot be truly gone. She knew something." This startling declaration sent electric shock waves through the assembly, for Clara's absence had left a void that reverberated deeply among them. Poirot, his brow meticulously furrowed, regarded Caroline with intent curiosity. "What is it you claim to know, frail but fierce one?" His voice, always calm yet compelling, invited her to step forth. "She was orchestrating something far grander than mere games, monsieur." "Poirot," Caroline elucidated, fingers trembling, clutching tightly to the memory of her friend. "I overheard them in the gardens, an argument that hinted at dark alliances born of envy and desperation. She feared for her life." The rest momentarily exchanged glances saturated with suspicion, their collective breaths halting as they considered her words. The artist Edward, who had projected bravado moments prior, recoiled slightly, as if haunted by past errors. "That is nothing more than wild imagination," he countered. Yet beneath his defiance lay an undercurrent of guilt, a river steeped in unease. Clara never feared confrontation. Her ambitions would keep her safe. "And yet," Poirot interpolated smoothly, "desperation often transforms courage into folly. What if Clara's recent pursuits entangled her more than designed? Was she merely a victim of her own grand designs?" As they continued, Poirot sensed the looming presence of another, the servant Henry, whose loyalty wore thin beneath the veneer of calm. "You speak of fear, Caroline, but do you comprehend the depths of treachery that dwell among us?" His voice creaked like the aged wood of the manor itself, veiling a life spent in service tethered to secrets unuttered. Clara was indeed astute in uncovering those who plotted against her, but what if she devoured the hearts of her closest companions as well? What if we, in our quest for ambition, were the architects of our own demise? Thus began the intricate dance of accusation and revelation, a waltz attended to by Poirot, carefully observing each footfall and gesture, woven into the tapestry of this dismal affair. As the storm raged outside, shadows lengthened on the walls, suggesting specters that only he seemed able to perceive. "Caroline," he inquired, "what else did your ears eavesdrop upon in those darkened moments? What beasts lie cloaked beneath the guise of friendship?" "Only snippets, fragments of conversations," she faltered, her countenance bespeaking an unwillingness to disclose further. "But there was mention of betrayal. Clara had alliances with those who wished her harm, and the thoughts I gathered hinted at a meeting that had gone critically awry." The insinuation, though fraught with ambiguity, ignited an ember of suspicion within Poirot's discerning mind. Ah, but the human heart, he pondered silently. It hides many things, mon ami. Yet here we stand in a sanctum of tumult. The evening continued, fraught, with tension and clues that threatened to slip through fingers like grains of sand. Edward's resurfacing motivations unraveled, draping him in doubt. Henry's waning resolve whispered secrets of betrayal beneath the very loyalty promised to Clara. When the clock struck the throes of midnight, an unexpected visitor burst through the door, agitated and disheveled. Jonathan, a figure once close to Clara, but mysteriously absent. "I heard the news. Where is Clara?" he implored, anguish sewn into the very fabric of his being. "Something isn't right," he breathed, eyes darting around the room, unearthing the unspoken tension. "Indeed, her absence reverberates with unbearable weight," Poirot replied, watching closely. "But tell me, Jonathan, what do you know of her dealings?" Caught off guard, Jonathan struggled, the right words eluding him like certain truths. I did not think harm would come to her," he nearly stammered. "She believed in something grand, an inheritance not merely of riches, but of power." The revelation landed with a disquieting impact, turning the eyes of the others upon him. "You would know of benefaction, no?" Edward hissed, a new frenzy igniting within him. "Perhaps Clara was the embodiment of betrayal," Henry rivaled, the glint of revelation blinding them momentarily. In the midst of the chaos, while they traded barbs and dualities tangled like thread into intricate knots, Poirot quietly experienced the duality of emotions. None were as they seemed. He interjected, delicate yet firm. "Pause," he commanded, his voice the eye of the storm. "All is not as it appears." Stepping back, he considered the shadows they cast, each face a reflection of guilt and veiled intentions. Who among you would benefit from Clara's demise? The web of deception is finely woven, yet one thread pulls taut. As the revelation of deceit hovered like daggered breaths over their heads, Poirot placed his fingers contemplatively against his chin. What appears as betrayal may carry the weight of remorse. Indeed, we are all but actors on this stage. With the storm a distant echo, Poirot began to untangle the threads, exposed to all with a clarity that pierced the fog. The grand reveal struck. The secret lies were intricately connected to one another, and the true betrayal lay not merely in ambitions unmet, but in the very hearts driven by fear. "And what of you, Jonathan?" Poirot's voice bore the weight of truth, piercing through layers of pretense. "You profited from Clara's inheritance, did you not? You concealed your connection, driven by fear of discovery." His accusation sent visceral shockwaves, forcing Jonathan to tremble before the assembled. "I meant to protect her. Each pact we forged, I thought it could shield us." Yet the confession lingered, a confession forged in desperation and greed, unseen by even the sharpest of minds until the final act. A betrayal so subtle and profound, it pierced deeper than the daggers anticipated. As the room descended into silence, Poirot stood firm among the remnants of shattered loyalty and ambition laid bare. "In the embrace of desire, my friends," he concluded with quiet severity, "false truths may conceal the most profound realities of our existence. Beware the heart, for it carries within it the seeds of ruin." What remained amid the flickering candlelight was the somber acknowledgement that the only legacy left to explore was the darkness for which they had all danced, now illuminated painfully into clarity as cold winds howled their melancholic dirge outside. Chapter 12. The Truth at Last. A blood-curdling scream sliced through the oppressive silence of the manor, reverberating against the damp walls like an unwelcome spectral visitor. It was an echo of despair, twisting the very air around Hercule Poirot, who stood in the center of the drawing room, eyes narrowed and heart racing. The candlelight flickered violently as the tempest outside seemed to respond to the cry, hurling torrents of rain against the window panes like a vengeful spirit seeking entry. Amidst the chaos, he sensed the weight of secrets yet unspoken, conspiracies winding tighter than a coiled serpent ready to strike. In the heart of this storm, Poirot's keen mind worked methodically. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he murmured to himself, absorbing the chaos that unfolded before him. Edward, a struggling artist with aspirations punctuated by envy, flinched at the sound as if it rested an old wound. Caroline, the young woman whose loyalty to Clara had unleashed a torrent of accusations, gripped a tattered shawl, her face a mask of icy dread. And then there was Jonathan, the opportunistic heir whose last-minute arrival stoked the embers of suspicion. Each wore their motives like clothing, yet it was the hidden attire, the motivations, fears, and desires that Poirot sought to uncover. As the echoes of the scream faded, Poirot calmly began his inquisition. It would seem we are in the throes of more than mere storm, my friends. Clara's absence looms large, and the question thus remains, what horrors transpired in her absence? Edward stepped forward, his bravado faltering beneath the piercing gaze of Poirot. I could not have harmed Clara, he protested, eyes darting nervously. I had spoken to her just hours before. She was buzzing with plans, ambitions. I had my grievances, yes, but to kill her? His words were laced with indignation, yet beneath the surface lay something darker, a flicker of regret. Caroline, emboldened by the swirling tension, interposed herself. You are not the only one burdened by grievances. Clara held dominion over us all, daring to dream where others feared to tread, she said, her voice sharp as glass. Poirot observed them with a steady calm. She was right. Clara's fierce independence cast long shadows on those around her. Yet it was Henry, the steadfast servant, who stood quietly in the corner, a paradox of loyalty and resentment. Perhaps it is envy that has festered, my lady, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. She claimed to safeguard her future, yet I witnessed her weave a web of alliances that may have ensnared herself within. His eyes glinted with unspoken truths, suggesting a loyalty that was far from absolute. As the hours crawled by, Poirot meticulously gathered fragments of information. He sensed the layers beneath the accusations, peeling them back like the skin of an onion. Edward had been overheard arguing aggressively with Clara. Their ambitions clashed, brittle as dried leaves. Caroline, who had poured her heart out to Clara, hid her desperation to prove worthy beneath an exterior of civil discomfort. And Jonathan, torn between admiration and avarice, clung to his ties to Clara in a vice grip, as if to reassure himself that her demise would not also mean his. I fear we have yet to establish a complete narrative, Poirot said, his brow furrowed in contemplation. Each of you, while bearing witnesses to this odyssey of betrayal, locks away a treasure trove of concealed truths. A heavy silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the rain's unrelenting assault against the windows. The storm outside was a reflection of the turmoil within, suggesting that time was slipping away faster than any of them would wish to admit. As Poirot pursued these threads, a revelation danced before him. Each suspect bore a reflection of Clara, their own ambitions intertwined, with hers in a complicated tapestry of betrayal. But just as he began to piece together a coherent story, a red herring emerged. A certain envelope was discovered in Clara's belongings, addressed to Jonathan, hinting at a conspiracy that would have repaid her in mistrust. Jonathan's bluster was explosive, declaring, I only sought to understand her affairs. She should have confided in me. Yet it rang hollow. Poirot deftly noted the tremor in Jonathan's voice, the quiver of fear mingling with a desperate attempt at self-defense. You fabricate excuses like a painter mixes colors, yet the picture you reveal is one of anguish, Poirot stated, pressing him further. What connections have you buried in your denial? Just as suspicion began to crystallize around Jonathan, a sudden explosion of clarity struck Poirot like a bolt of lightning piercing the dark sky. Without warning, a thundering knock enveloped the scene, startling everyone present. As Poirot opened the door, he was greeted by the police officer who had previously startled them with the news of a confession. We apprehended someone, sir, he announced, his breath hitching as he stepped into the room. It appears Clara. She had a hidden life, a sister none of us knew of. The room erupted in disbelief, glances firing like arrows. Indeed, Poirot said slowly, collecting his thoughts like swirling smoke. Clara bore a weight far heavier than ambition. She bore a secret that stitched threads of her entire existence. But who was this sister? All eyes turned towards Jonathan, brows searched for expressions of guilt and betrayal. Jonathan recoiled. This I did not know. She spoke of power, wanted to embrace it. What does this imply? Poirot, gathering the tapestry of truths, finally spoke the words that unraveled the entire convoluted affair. In our search for Clara's truth, we must acknowledge that it is indeed betrayal from beyond this room. An identity buried, hidden motives intertwined with greed. The intricate fabric we thought was Clara's was sewn together in darkness. With painstaking precision, Poirot connected each thread, and his finger traced around the room, landing on the trembling forms of his suspects. The sister, you see, sought Clara's affections, but it was ultimately Jonathan's ambition forged from intimate knowledge that fueled the darkness. The final twist settled heavily upon the assembled, as the realization hit like thunder. Clara's demise was not born of a singular wish to betray. Rather, it was born from the twisted web of ambition that enveloped them all. As the final confession unfolded, Poirot concluded, his voice echoing through the heavy atmosphere, "There, my friends, lies the ultimate darkness. Remember, for it is not merely the act of betrayal that severed trust, but the very design of our desires." The candle flickered weakly, shadows danced upon the walls, and the sirens wailed beyond, shattering the stillness. The truth had been revealed, and with it, the permanence of the relationship shattered beneath its weight.